Alright, welcome to episode 2 of our Kerbal Space Program career mode. And if you remember, if in episode 1, if you've come from that, we basically have just unlocked general rocketry. We've got a nice new fuel tank to go with there, a swivel engine fuel, liquid fuel engine, a thumper solid fuel booster. So we got these things. I've already purchased these. My headset actually went out on me early on in this video, right after I had purchased these. Like if you haven't purchased an item yet, like for example these, you'll notice that some of them have entry purchases down here that they haven't been purchased yet. But I did purchase the fuel tank, and I did purchase the swivel and the thumper. So we're going to be using them. Let's go ahead and just, a good habit is to always go in and look here at what your active contracts are. Now, some of these are going to be, we're just going to get them by doing them. We're going to get that altitude record. We're going to get that distance record eventually just by getting into orbit and doing the escape atmosphere and some of these other items. The set speed record will also be met once we orbit Kerbin. So we're just going to basically try to get into space. So let's create a rocket that's going to hopefully get us, on our way up there at least. So let's start out by creating, obviously, a command pod that our Kerbal is going to be in. And we're going to obviously want a parachute so that they can survive. And once again, we want this science module so that we can collect science data from the upper atmosphere. So with this rocket, I'm not really going to try to get all the way into orbit, but what I am going to try to do is get it into the atmosphere, which would be about 70,000 kilometers up, or 70 kilometers up would be 70,000 meters up. And we can also get some goo up there too, so let's go ahead and add a couple of goos containers. And these seem to do pretty well higher up. They kind of help stabilize the descent, and it keeps it, even if this thing gets turned around, it makes it harder to get turned around, but even if it does, it puts some wind drag on this so that it doesn't become a bullet coming back into the atmosphere quite so much. We could go ahead and put this communicatron on, but we don't really have any way to charge our batteries yet, and to really and I don't even think we have ability to get extra batteries. So we need all the power that this thing has in it for adjusting our trajectory and doing maneuvers in space. So we don't want really to do any communication at this point. So now let's go ahead and put on we're going to use a liquid fuel top up here, and we're going to need a separator, or a stacked coupler is the technical name here. So we're going to detach this and hope to get both of these back. This has risks to it that we wouldn't have if we just brought back the pod, but I'm hoping we can bring back this science too. And then we're going to grab a fuel tank for our upper stage here, and let's go ahead and do 2 full fuel tanks. This is going to make it kind of top heavy, but we're not really trying to get into orbit. We really just want to get in the atmosphere. I think I can do that with almost a pretty vertical takeoff is what I'm going to probably end up doing. So after we put that engine on, we're going to end this stage of the rocket. And now let's just try to get by with this big thumper solid rocket booster. This thing is very top heavy. It's gonna have a real risk of falling. It could actually fall while it's on the launch pad, so we kind of gotta be ready for that. I'm gonna go ahead and do 4 of these. Maybe that'll make it a little more stable going up, because we don't have any bigger fins. For something this big, this is not a lot of control. It's going to be real easy to get tipped over and run out of control, in which case we'll have to be ready to bail this guy out and just revert back to launch because of the difficulty level we're playing at. But let's I think that's enough force. That's definitely going to get us some new things, and it's going to be worth the money. It's a $7,000 rocket. You can see down here. I'm hoping I can get to 70,000 meters up, between 70 and 80,000, but I don't really want to go higher than that. And with these liquid fueled engines, I can just cut them off. So these won't fire until this stage is done. You'll see how that works. And I can verify my stages now by going mouse up and mouse down, to scroll up and down in the view. But I can see here's going to fire off first. It turns green. Then it's going to decouple. And then we'll fire this off separate. Now, if I wanted this to just auto fire off, I can just drag these together. And that means it's going to decouple. And it's going to start firing that one off. I probably don't want to do that, because I might want to have some flexibility. If I'm already going up really fast, maybe I'll wait until I'm a little higher up to punch that. And we definitely don't want to get these mixed up though. So hit plus to add and drag this up there. So I can fire the engine off separate from the staging decoupler. Maybe that's not a good strategy, I don't know, but we're going to give it a try. And we're going to swap Valentina in so she can get some experience, because Jebediah is not going to get a lot more experience doing the same thing over and over. This would be a little bit different, but we want to spread the experience around a little bit, especially this early on. And I don't have anything that can really support this. I could use this girder segment to try to get some support for this, but we've got to unlock some more parts to have really good support. What I'm going to do is try to launch quickly. So we're going to go to our launch pad, and before our rocket can start falling to gravity, as long as it's pointing straight up still, I'm going to fire off this solid rocket booster. So we hit T to turn on our automatic pilot, or not automatic pilot, but stabilizing, and we hit space to take off. And you'll notice by automatic pilots at this SAS thing, we can see our solid fuels getting burned up, and we are staying very straight. We can look at this here in the center, and I am going to start just trying to angle a little bit over by hitting the D key down this 90-degree angle to get us out over the water. But it looks like we're maybe, or barely, if anything, going to have enough to get into the atmosphere, out of the atmosphere. Okay, we did get an altitude record there. We knew we'd get that. We're going to get another altitude record, and right now our booster rocket's burned out, so we're going to jettison it, and we're going to go ahead and immediately fire off this rocket. And fortunately, it didn't spin out of control, and it actually, we're using this swivel rocket, so we have some control over it. So I'm going to start pitching it over a little bit and hope that we don't lose control here, which we're not yet, but it does seem to be fighting me a little bit. I'm hitting the A key a lot. So we got an altitude record. So we should easily get into the atmosphere. Now I'm actually going to want to hit M here, and I can start looking at this little feature here, and this shows me how high we're going to go up. We're already going up too high. So I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to hit X to cut it. And I'm going to, once again, I'll show you what I did. I hit M, and if I scroll in, I can see this is me going up in the spacecraft, and I'm going to eventually get all the way up to here. So I've got so much forward thrust right now that I'm still going up, and I'm at 60,000. I probably could have had a chance at getting into orbit. Really wasn't my intent. But I really just wanted to get up in the atmosphere because I want to get that science back. And by going up so high and coming back down, I'm going to have a risk of burning up. But fortunately, I have a lot of fuel, and I'll be able to burn this fuel to kind of slow my descent. But anyway, you'll notice now that we're at 79,000, 80,000 meters up, I can do a science, observe the materials bay here, and look at this. I get 22.5 science. That's enough to unlock a whole nother tier, so I keep that data. I can do the goo now, observe the mystery goo, and I get another 9 science for this mystery goo. I can do a crew report, so I'm basically repeating these things all in this upper atmosphere, and I can keep that data too. I'm going to go ahead and try. I think that when I observe this mystery goo, this is like I can get another collection. I got another 9, so I'm going to keep that data. I think I've got all the data I can get. I can't actually get out of the crew hatch yet because I haven't unlocked the EVA. So later we'll be able to do an EVA and actually walk out of here. Now, we might have a little struggle getting back into atmosphere. We're almost to the top. We're going to go to 108,000 meters. So we've launched pretty high up. We're a real, almost a real astronauts now. But we're going to want to slow our descent. Notice how we're still going up. So this is still going up, but at some point it's going to reverse and start going back down. This is as good a time as any to show you these things on the HUD down here in the center. Now notice that when I point at this one, it's got a yellow thing, and it's sometimes kind of hard to see. But this is where you are basically, and I'm terrible at pronouncing this, the apices, yeah, the apices of where you're at here at the top. And so if I'm at this and I actually hit the thrusters go this way, this is going to actually push me into orbit, push me higher. If I go the opposite way, that yellow one has a polar opposite, and notice how this one has a little X in it. It's kind of hard to see. This is what you are going to thrust with when you want to descend or come back in. So I'm going to burn on this, and what this will do is this would automatically, you'll notice as I do this, it brings this in. Notice how it narrows it. So it actually is going to bring me in a really, like, more of a straight descent. And I can now just basically burn, you know, my engines to slow my descent. And so when I'm watching this right here, it's 277 meters a second. And so I'm gonna wait a little bit because right now I'm just falling through the atmosphere. Maybe I won't actually wait that long. I'm gonna burn a little now and slow it down just a little bit. But what's going to happen is I'm going to keep picking up speed and picking up speed and picking up speed and picking up speed. It is actually going to be challenging, and there's the chance of burning up just because by the time I hit the atmosphere, I'm already going to be going so fast. You can see I'm already going over 300 meters a second. I'm still at 86,000 meters, and see my descent is picking up. I'm falling faster and faster and faster. Once I hit the atmosphere, I'm going to start braking, and you'll see the flames and everything coming off of my rocket. But see, I've still got another 10,000 feet, or meters, I should say, until I hit any of the atmosphere at all. And then for the next 20,000 meters, there's going to be very little atmosphere, so I'm not going to face a lot of resistance. But then once you start getting around 50,000 down to 40,000, it's really going to be impacting on my spacecraft, and you can see my speed's picking up here. So I'm going to start burning a little bit right here, and you can see I'm almost out of fuel. One thing I can do is I could say, well, let's try a thrust limiter, and so that maybe I can burn a little less fuel, but still, you know, look at how I can notice if it's slowing my meters per second. So it's coming down at 60, 680, 690, 700. If I fire it, notice how now I'm actually braking, and I can see it slowing. Well, now I'm out. So now I've used up all my fuel. At this point, I might as well jettison this. So I'm going to jettison my engine there, and now it's just going to be up to me keeping basically a good rule of thumb is to try to keep this aligned with this yellow dot as you come in, because it's going to now be braking and the heat's going to be hitting the bottom of this. If I was turning and spinning all around it, I'd be taking on a lot more heat. But I think we're going to be okay. Notice how we're, you know, at 800, 900, you know, oh, now we did get turned around. We got flipped around, so that's really bad that's happened, actually. Luckily, we're over the water, but this can be a real problem because I'm just going to be falling too fast, and it's going to be close. It's going to be really, really close. I actually am very lucky we're over the water, and I think right about now I can fire off parachute safely, and we're going to barely make it. That was really, really close. But we were able, because we were over water, to get the full descent, and the Kerbal made it back. We still haven't hit the water yet. You can see us over it, but that was a little risky there. We came in really hot and fast. A general rule of thumb is that if you're over 250 meters a second, you can't pull your parachute, at least not with this first design parachute that you're going to use for a while in the first several hours of your career mode. You're going to blow your parachute out if you're going too fast. And so I was having to wait, and at the same time, you really need to pull the parachute when it's about 1,500 meters or so. Anything much lower than that, you start risking, not getting it pulled in time. So that was a pretty close call, but we survived. Now look at our spoils here. Look at that. We got 11 of these. I can see it up here. It says 11. So let's just see all the stuff we got. We set a distance record of 28 kilometers. Now, when it says distance, that means like actual how far away we got from the launch zone. So once we actually went really, really high up and, easily passed that distance record. And the same with the 17 kilometers, 11 kilometers. We set our altitude record of 70 kilometers. So that's basically escaping the atmosphere right there. We did escape the atmosphere, so we got our contract complete for escaping the atmosphere, and you'll notice here that we have 44,000 coming to us, so we easily paid for the expense of this rocket launch. We get 7 science coming to us for this, so this was a very important contract to complete. A distance record gets us money. Altitude record, it gets us money. So we've blown pretty much all the altitude records. We're not going to get a lot more of this. This is like a one-time thing. We've set a lot of records, but we're never going to get to set this many probably in a single launch ever again. So we got the 19-kilometer altitude record and the 11.5 kilometer altitude record. So we got a whole bunch of distance and altitude records, as you can see. And all of them gave us money. Now, let's recover our vessel and see what we get from that. And we didn't get any additional contracts, those had already been fulfilled, but you can see that we earned 45.3 science. That's quite a bit of science to get for that. So you can see the breakdown here. As you can see, the bulk of it came from the material studies while in space near Kerbal. So we're going to be doing these material studies, and you can see we actually also got quite a bit from the goo as well, suborbital goo, and you can see we got a lot less for this one than this one. So we kind of want to keep an eye on that, because you don't want to use your goo containers where you're not going to get the most value from them. We got 3,400 back, so not too bad from what we spent, and of course our Kerbal got some experience. So a very successful launch that was there. So now that we got this experience, this 57.9 experience, let's see what we can do here. Notice how we can get the stability and we can get the survivability. So we can pick up both of these. Another option would be to jump right up here to advanced rocketry and pick off something like this. Or we could even pick this off, general construction. These are still locked because we haven't unlocked this or this. But now, one of the things here, as you'll see, is that we have these radial mount parachutes. We got micro landing struts. The service bay is actually kind of handy. We'll use that probably. And a heat shield, which would be important. It would save us from having some of the problems that we suffered from that in that last entry where we kind of got flipped around. That heat shield would help with that. And so it makes sense just from a practical standpoint. We're going to need to unlock these two. It unlocks everything else. So we're going to go ahead. And the stability ones here, you'll notice it gives us a radial decoupler. That's going to allow us to attach booster rockets to the side of our other rockets and then decouple them from the sides of rockets. So we'll use this right away. We've also got a better fin that's going to help us. We got a nose cone and some things that'll let us get a little better aerodynamics as well. And in our survivability, we're going to have what we discussed earlier. So let's grab these up. We're going to get our stability. We're going to get our survivability. And we still got 24.9 left, but it's not enough to unlock anything in this tier. But, you know, now we've got a little bit more. As you can see, it's a good progression of how they kind of build you up. You do some things. And now if we go and look at our mission control, look at all these new contracts we got. We can ferry a VIP safely to their destination. We can take 2 tourists up into space. We have visual surveys that we can do of Kerbal. And we also are going to get a lot of these testing things. And we're going to go ahead and do some of these because so you can see how they work, and it'll also give us some things. So hopefully we'll be able to actually work both of these in, or work these into other missions. So we'll be looking for opportunities to do that. Notice we got a new decoupler that we can test. This says we can, you know, just test it at the landing site. To perform this test, we can just do it right while we're landed. So this is a real easy one to do. And another one that is a solid booster rocket here that we can fire off as part of a launch. That's kind of a give me. Now, one thing you might notice is we can only have 2 active contracts, but look at all these that we have available. If we click on active, you'll notice that we have a lot less here that are just give me's. We've got a speed record and a distance record to set. We're going to have to, you know, we're going to have some way of holding more contracts. Unfortunately, all of these buildings are upgradable, so there's a whole layer of metagame here, you can say, as we upgrade these areas. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to right click this, and notice how if I mouse over this upgrade, it changes the instructions down here. So it's telling me if I upgrade this, then I could have 7 contracts, plus it's going to unlock the tracking station upgrade required for flight planning. So we want that. We want a tracking station. We need to be able to do some flight planning, so we don't have to manually do everything in terms of our navigation in space. We're going to need all the tools we can get. So we're going to upgrade our mission control, and when we do that, and I click here, you'll notice now we can have 7 contracts instead of just 2. So let's pick up these tests. Let's test this Terrier. And this is like the Terrier engine, this LV909 Terrier liquid fuel engine. It's an upper stage engine. It's something you're going to use usually once you're, you know, higher up, off the ground. It's a small engine you're going to use for landers, you know, once you're like breaking out of the atmosphere, I would say. And you can see here, they want us to test it a little lower than we would probably normally use it, but not a problem. We're going to go ahead and accept that contract. And then we've already used this swivel engine. We used it in our last mission to get in the atmosphere, and you can see that's about when we fired it off. And it was when we were between this altitude and this altitude. So we're going to take that one. And then we're also going to go ahead and take the test for the decoupler. And we'll go ahead and take the test for the solid fuel booster flea. So we've already grabbed up all the tests. We've only got 2 more contracts left. I don't think we want to try to do all the tests and get somebody safely to their destination. So we'll wait on those. Let's see if we can perform this. This says it wants a crew flight report 9,000 meters below 19,000 meters near a certain place. So this is actually kind of one that's kind of leading us towards more of the airplane model, where we would fly in, do our crew report, and get out. So we might wait on that one as well. So we've got now in our active these that we want to set. You know, this getting into orbit is definitely going to be a big deal when we do it. But maybe before we do that, we're going to test all these out, and it'll let us unlock what we would hope to unlock is maybe this advanced rocketry that's going to give us our Terrier engine, which actually we're going to get to use this in our tests. So we're going to actually have access to this now, ironically. And then we've got our bigger fuel tank as well. So we're going to unlock that. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this episode up there, and then we will then build a new set of rockets to do those tests and finish those new contracts so we can get more science, get some better engines, and get up into orbit. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in episode 3.